Welcome to the Practical NLP podcast with me, Andy Smith. Just a reminder that you can find the show notes for this episode on our website at nlppod.com. This week in episode 51, we're learning how to use just about the most robust and productive ideas generation process that I've come across. It's the Disney Strategy for Creativity. I'll be sharing some alternative ways of using the strategy to facilitate brainstorming groups or just to make it easier to come up with more, better ideas by yourself. How would you like to facilitate an ideas generation workshop with a group of insurance underwriters, actuaries, and finance people? People who, by both inclination and training, are about the most detail-focused and risk-averse you could find. Would you be expecting an exciting, productive session or a day of hard work with not much to show at the end of it? I was asked to run that very workshop some years ago, and it could have turned out to be a very hard grind. Fortunately, being trained in NLP, I had a robust and easy-to-use format to call on. This simple but powerful process was developed by NLP pioneer Robert Dilts, who based it on the way Walt Disney used to organize his creative teams to come up with ideas. It's detailed in Robert's book Strategies of Genius, Volume 1, which also has ideas drawn from the thought processes, as far as they can be modelled, of Aristotle, Mozart, and even a fictional character, Sherlock Holmes. The biggest block to creativity in business is the tendency, culturally ingrained to a greater or lesser extent depending on country, industry sector, and profession, to shoot down new ideas before they get off the runway by pointing out all the reasons why they couldn't work. If you've ever been on the receiving end of this treatment, you'll be familiar with how it rapidly shuts down your imagination and your willingness to contribute. In fact, of course, when imagining new ways of doing things, there are no bad ideas. The least practical suggestion may by association spark the eventual solution. If new ideas are critiqued too soon, they can't develop, and creativity is stifled. The Disney strategy gets round this problem by separating idea generation into three distinct phases. A dreamer mode, where all new ideas are encouraged. A realist or implementer mode, which looks at how to make the ideas work in practice. And finally, a critic mode, which looks for flaws in the ideas and what could go wrong. So this is how each stage works. In the dreamer stage, you're just generating ideas, loads of them, free associate, bounce off other people's ideas, and it doesn't matter at all about quality control. Creativity works by association rather than logic, so the more ideas that you have up there to spark off recollections and associations, the better. It may be that a terrible idea will suggest another idea that's not great, which in turn leads to another idea that is the worst so far, but something about that idea in turn gets you to a superb idea, the one that will save your business or change your life. If you'd vetoed the first idea on the grounds of quality, you never would have got to the good one. If you're on your own when you're doing this stage, try looking up and to your right to access visual construct mode. That will work for a lot of people. If you've listened to episode 18 about eye-accessing cues, you will already have worked out if you're normally wired or reverse wired with regard to eye-accessing cues. If you didn't catch that episode, and particularly if you're left-handed, you may find that looking up and to your left works better. In the implementer or realist mode, you're selecting the ideas you're drawn to and thinking about how to make them work. Not can they work or how practical are they, still less what could go wrong. Just what do I need to do to build this or make it happen? You may find it easier to get into the practical mindset that this mode needs by looking down in the direction of your dominant hand, for most people your right hand, for a few seconds. Finally, and some of you will be saying, at last, in the critic mode, you're looking for what could go wrong with the idea or plan that you've been building. For some of you, especially if you're detail-focused and away from motivated, this will feel quite familiar. If not, try looking down towards your non-dominant hand, usually the hand you'd wear your watch on, to get into auditory digital or internal dialogue mode, as this is great for discovering flaws in logic and inconsistencies, and just ask yourself, what could go wrong? The result of using the Disney strategy is that you can generate many more ideas much more quickly, and those which look promising have a chance to develop and mature a little before they're examined for potential failings. Any problems or flaws found at the critic stage can be processed through the cycle again, dreaming up ways of fixing them working out how to implement the fixes, and running a critical eye over them to identify any new problems. There are many different ways you can implement the Disney strategy. Here are some possibilities. Firstly, guide the whole group through each phase. It works best when you make the rules for each phase explicit. For example, all ideas are good ideas for the dreamer phase, and we're looking for how it could work, not how it could fail, for the implementer stage. To emphasize the distinction between the phases, you could get participants to move to a different table, a different room, or a different physical location. To warm the group up for each phase, you could invite them to remember a time when they were creative, when they made something work in practice, or when they successfully looked for and fixed problems. Or divide a larger group into teams, each team dreaming up ideas. Then rotate their ideas to another group for the implementer phase and rotate again for the critic phase. Or assign the dreamer, implementer, and critic roles to different people. Some people will be naturally suited to one role or another. You could spread the process out over time, or you could have everyone present throughout. For example, if you have a natural critic in your team, you could brief them to silently take note of any flaws that they spot in the dreamer and implementer phases, only revealing the criticisms that are still relevant when it comes to the critic phase. You can also use the Disney strategy by yourself as an idea generation method. Make sure you move to a different physical location, take a break, or do something completely different to make a clean distinction between each of the three phases. So this is how it worked out with the insurance people. We actually ran 2 workshops, one with the backroom finance boys and one with the call center staff. About a week before the workshops, we sent out idea sheets decorated with the traditional light bulb picture that denotes ideas to each group so they could record and bring in with them any ideas they had. The call center people came into their workshop with stacks of ideas, some workable, some wacky. The underwriters and actuaries came in with 3 or 4 cautious proposals between them. We used, in this case, the whole group 3 phases format that I mentioned before. We made the rules for each stage explicit at the start. At first, the finance people, as you would expect from their professional roles and the industry they were in, were very quick to find the faults in each idea. Sometimes even the person whose idea it was would break off their explanation halfway through and start pointing out reasons why their own idea wouldn't work. However, because they knew what the rules were for the dreamer phase, they stopped themselves halfway through their critiques as soon as they realized what they were doing. In some cases, they even criticized themselves for criticizing. Gradually, they eased up on the habit of instantly scanning for flaws, and the ideas started to flow more freely. We ended up with 30 to 40 ideas stuck up on flipchart pages on the wall. I'm not pretending it was an easy ride like with the call center group who really took to the process like naturals. The backroom people heaved a sigh of relief when we exited the dreamer phase and started coming back to earth for the implementation stage. And they really came into their own in the critic phase. You can bet that the ideas that were still standing at the end of that workshop were pretty much bulletproof. So, if we can use the Disney strategy with a detail-oriented, problem-scanning, risk-averse group like that, you can use it with anyone. So where could you use it in your business or in your life? That's it for this week's podcast. Next time we'll be trying out a powerful NLP technique for doing things better or installing new strategies, the new behavior generator. And just to let you know a couple of things that might be useful. Firstly, I was interviewed recently by Robyn Stratton-Berkessel for her Positivity Strategist podcast about the overlap between NLP and another powerful change method, Appreciative Inquiry, or AI for short. You can listen to that conversation at positivitystrategist.com/PS21. That conversation pointed out some connections between the 2 disciplines that I hadn't seen before. So watch out for an article or 2 appearing in the next couple of weeks on the blog at nlppod.com about what NLP can learn from Appreciative Inquiry. And another article or 2 on my emotional intelligence blog at coachingleaders.co.uk about what AI can learn from NLP. Secondly, my online store at webstore.nlppod.com was off the air recently. This was to make changes to cope with the crazy new VAT regulations that have come in across the EU, which would have made me liable to charge VAT at the rate applicable where the customer is based, with different rates for each of the, I think it's 28 countries in the EU, with no VAT exemption threshold. Fortunately, I found a payment processor who will handle all the VAT for me, so I've dodged that massive administrative hassle, plus the requirement and privacy risk to the customer, I might add, of having to store customer details for 10 years. The store is now back online at webstore.nlppod.com, and you'll be pleased to know that prices to you, the customer, are unchanged. By the way, I know many consultants, trainers, and business owners listen to this podcast, so if you create any kind of digital product, ebooks that you sell yourself, audio downloads, web courses, and you're based in the EU, you are affected by these new VAT measures, which have caused many micro businesses to shut up shop rather than deal with the admin overhead. The changes have not been at all well publicised, so many small businesses that are affected don't know about them. If you want to know more, or to join thousands of small and micro business owners and creators in campaigning for a realistic threshold so fledgling businesses are not strangled at birth, visit the EU VAT campaign website at euvataction.org. See you next time.